this place that I'm at now, that hurt. That came with a lot of pain, a lot of, eyes looking at me going through that. But I feel like I would have anybody left who might want me. I don't know what else lies ahead, but it's the worst thing I've been through to date. So I didn't always stand up for myself in that way. But when I got a sense of self and more of a sense of identity, that came from, some of it came from heartbreak. Like, if I need you in my space, you don't gotta really entertain me. Just be near me, hug me. Yeah, like, hug me. I just tell Shaquan, you put your feet on me. Like, it's fine. Like, I just need to feel you there. Even when I met Shaquan, I said, listen, I need a friend. What does it look like when you're correctly loved? And that was a really profound question that I couldn't answer.
Hey, Conscious Crew, and we are back for another episode on the Conscious Creative Corner. Today is a very special episode because we have someone that I actually went to school with. You might know him as Pastor. You might know him as a missionary. You might know him as the owner of the Hope and Help podcast. But I know him as Fred, and today we have Fred on the line. What's up, Fred?
Yeah. What's going on?
I'm so excited that you're here today. Do people still call you Fred? I don't even know. Honestly, when I was reaching out, I was like, do I call him Pastor? Or do I call him?
That's funny. Most people just call me Gary. You know what I mean?
Okay, so what do you like to go by?
Oh, Gary's cool. And Fred was cool because it was the government, but, like, I feel like, everybody else is Gary. Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna call you Fred. So you are a pastor, and you are an interim pastor right now at is it something Baptist? Union Baptist Church. Union Baptist Church.
Yeah.
How's that been going for you? Because I honestly,
it's good.
I didn't see this for you, but I'm not God, right?
You'd be probably the only one. Everybody was to call me Pastor Fred. They knew,
Really?
They knew early on that was kind of the move for me. But it sometimes take you a little while to walk into it. But it was like kind of on my life. I kind of knew back then. Yeah.
For real? I don't know. You know what? Mm-hmm. It could be because I'm in denial, right? So people used to call me, and I do not claim. You know what? Jesus might want me to do this, but they used to call me silent prophetess, right? Because I would have visions. I just don't like sharing them because it's scary, like to walk in the gift that God gives you.
Yeah,
it's really scary. And so, like, even as I'm saying this now, I could feel the conviction, but I'm just going to ignore it just a little bit. All right.
That is funny.
All right. So today we are talking about relationships. So typically on my podcast, I usually do talk about relationships, right? But I think it's super special to have you here because we have someone with the anointing of God talking about relationships. And we know that God is the one that brings us together, and he doesn't like when we're unequally yoked, right? For you, right out the gate, tell me, what does relationship mean to you?
That's a good question. I would say for me, relationship is, I guess it's an agreement. One of my favorite scriptures when it comes to relationship is, how can two walk together unless they agree? For me, unequally yoked is about, business relationships. It's more about, the fellowship between unbelievers in business and commerce and how we work together. But for me, agreement is the key word to a relationship. Like, we can't go the same way. It's like you picking a person to go on a particular path with. And if you can't have agreement, then you can't go down that same path. And so for me, relationship is finding somebody who you can find intentional agreement with. And, that would be my definition of, like, if I had to think about all of life, like everything I've been through, it's about finding somebody who you can find agreement with.
So when you speak about unequally yoked, because I like what you just said. You said usually that's like, you think it's like more so business.
Yeah.
Okay. So when it comes to relationship, it's more so, can we come into this covenant together in agreement and kind of work through this, right?
Right. Yeah. Yep. When I do Like, that verse is always going to come up in conversation around relationship, just because the church has kind of grabbed it and run for a surface text. But when you read that text on a deeper level, it isn't talking about relationships as much as we would like it to, although it does fall within the scope of relationship. But the nature of the relationship is not intimate. But when we're talking about intimacy and we're talking about picking somebody to do life with, to covenant with, agreement is going to take you far more than where that person is with God, because you're called to cultivate the person that you're aligning with. So, especially from the man's perspective, if she's all she's ever going to be when you meet her, then you're not doing your job and she's not growing, right? Because we're called to grow each other. And so sometimes the best gifts do require some level of attention, cultivation, and assembly.
Okay. So, as we were saying, you kind of gave like an eloquent definition about our relationships and what it looks like outside of the business realm. And I completely agree, right? A lot of us grow up in church and we kind of just know what we're told because we don't do the work to actually go and read the Bible and know God for ourselves, right? So as you're taking this journey and this path and you're understanding what relationships are and what that means for you, how did you then cultivate your own relationship within, so be it not even just romantic, but friendships, right? To understand how, because you have to come into an agreement when it's with friendships too, right?
Yeah. So for me, I guess, how do I cultivate relationships even if they're not intimate? I think it took for me to get to a place of, the relationships that I have now. It took a lot of, introspection. It took a lot of like looking into myself and seeing what it is that I really wanted, what it is that I really desire. One of my friends is a therapist, shout out to her, and she asked me a question. She was like, what does it look like when you're correctly loved? And that was a really profound question that I couldn't answer. And so I did the homework. And so that is that allowed me the time to look and see, okay, what is it that I really need and want? What are some non-negotiables? What are some things that, like, if I get it, I don't, so it will be okay. But I think doing the internal work of trying to see what it is that Gary needs and wants has led to, just sense of being okay no matter how people show up, if they show up, if they don't. And so for me, relationships are just about, like, again, that agreement. Like, are we going the same path? Do we have the same shared values? Do we agree on the important things in life? And if we don't, then it might be hard to hold space for one another. I do have friends who think differently from me, and that's okay. But I couldn't say they're like deep, deep, close friends. You know what I'm saying? Like, so for me, friendship is just about, again, agreement, compatibility. Also, I have a list of things that I want and need in people that are going to show up in my space.
And so are you the kind of person where if you guys are not in agreement, you can wholeheartedly face on and say, like, look, this isn't working for me, like cutting your friends off? Or are you more like, let me be a little bit more passive, right? And see if it just dwindles out on its own?
In the past, I would say I was more passive. I didn't really speak up for myself. So I would say a big part of my journey today, as I understand it, is self-advocacy. I'm big into that now, like standing up for yourself, sharing your boundaries, sharing your values, what makes you feel loved. In the past, I just kind of let people kind of do whatever. And it was sad, but that was because I was scared to stand up for myself. Like, I didn't feel valuable enough to make those types of claims, or like, and I feel like I would have anybody left who might want me, so I didn't always stand up for myself in that way. But when I got a sense of self and more of a sense of identity, that came from, some of it came from heartbreak, some of it came from disappointment, some of it came from just healthy work. Like, I'm gonna detach myself from people so I can understand who I am. The person I am today could tell somebody, like, look, that's not working for me. I feel like I use the term a lot now. I feel like, as I've gone through life and life has just kind of sifted me out, those are not conversations that I really shy away from anymore. Like, if I feel like it's not working for me, I could just stand on business and tell you today. This version of me can. In the past, not so much.
It's interesting that you talk about your past and then, like, today. I just did an episode about emotionally immature parents. And from that, we learn that our attachment styles have a lot to do with like our foundational values that we learned from our parents, right? How they show up for us when we're having a time of distress, right? And so you mentioned like, you used to just shy away from it. And it makes me wonder, are you familiar with like attachment styles and your own attachment style?
No, but when you asked me the questions prior to the episode, when you mentioned that, it made me do a lot of introspection. But I don't know what my attachment. I haven't really dived into that on the therapeutic side. So I love to be educated.
All right. So there's 4. All right. So we have our secure attachments. We have our insecure attachments. We have our anxious avoidant attachment. And then we have our disorganized attachment. And real quick, when we have a disorganized attachment, it's usually people that have been through a lot of trauma, right? And we're talking about losing a bunch of parents, not a bunch, you only got 2. Losing your parents, right? Losing loved ones, maybe dealing with something that was super traumatic. The way in which we attach to people is how we actually show up in the world with other people. When we have your avoidant attachment style, maybe you go through something super rough, right? And then your parents are going to shame you. So in order to keep yourself from feeling shame, you're like, I'm not even going to say anything. I'm not going to talk about it, because if I talk about it, that shame is going to hurt far worse. Talking about it is going to hurt far worse, right, than for me to go ahead and be shamed, right? Then we have our anxious attachment, where it's just like, I want to interact, right? Because the thought of not interacting makes me feel like I'm being rejected. So the avoidance is like, I'm okay with the rejection, right? I'm not going to be shamed. The anxious is like, shame me, right? I need to know that there's some sort of connection. Secure attachment, it's healthy, right? Maybe you have an issue where you go to your parents and then they are validating your emotions. They're saying like, you know what, Gary, it's okay. I can see why you might be upset. It's okay. I can see why you might be frustrated. Versus the avoidant. If you're avoidant, it's just like, I'm not even going to tell them what's going on with me because I don't want to hear that. So that's just the premise of it, right? And then disorganized is a little bit of anxious and avoidant, right? We don't always fit into these cookie cutter situations, but if we're looking at situations on a whole, sometimes we fall into these categories, right? We take our attachment styles into our relationships. So let's say you have your partner and your partner is just arguing with you all the time. Someone that might have an avoidant attachment might be like, they might shut down. You might hear your partner say like, you always shut down, Gary, right? Another partner, I'm sure your partner doesn't sound like that. Another person might say, if you're anxious, right, she might be picking a fight with you all the time. Like, where you going, right? I want to talk with you. These things come up because of our foundational, or just inherently how we foundationally viewed emotional reactivity and how we, I guess, just interact with our parents, and then it kind of flows into our relationships, right? So that's a nutshell.
Okay.
With that being said, right, do you feel like you fall into one of those categories?
I think it's hard to discern. I think we need some sessions to figure out where it is. But I would say that for me, I would say it probably falls somewhere in the insecure and secure. Because I feel like it depended on how the person showed up in my space, right? But for the most part, like I guess my attachments, I would say I'll lean more to the secure, because I grew up with older, and my grandparents, and they were kind of older, and I learned how to self-soothe. Like I learned how to just be my own kind of person in that way, in that environment. But in the world, I don't know how to show up for myself. So I don't know. That'd be kind of hard to put me in a box. I would say relationally, like in relationships, intimate relationships, I tend to be just a calm presence. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm always I show up the same. Like I'm consistent in that way. I don't really get flustered. So like, I would say like I'm secure in that way. You know what I mean? Like it takes a lot to, make me kind of shift that position.
Okay.
But so I'm not sure. I couldn't place myself. Yeah.
You have a very cool temperament. When you say you learn to self-soothe, and I'm not here to assess, right?
It's fine. No, it's fine.
To self-soothe, is it because your grandparents were obviously available to you, but it's more so they taught you how to self-soothe, or is it like they weren't emotionally available and then you had to self-soothe?
No, they were emotionally available. They just weren't like, how do I put it? They just weren't my age. You know what I mean? So like if in terms of relating, like if I wanted to go play, like I was going to be with my, 60-year-old grandparent, you know what I mean? So like I had to learn how to, like sometimes I throw the ball up in the air and play catch until my friends came outside. Like I had to learn how to be okay with being by myself, because even though we had like a pretty cool knit family, but we also had a very separate home experience. Like, they might be in their room watching something, I'm in my room watching something. It wasn't a bunch of like interaction all the time. You know what I mean? So I learned how to just be okay with being by myself. I'm actually really introverted in that way. Like at the end of the day, if people are not around me, I'm cool. Like I'll be okay. Cause that's usually once people sleep and kind of calm down for the day, then I'm like, all right, it's my time. So I got that from them. Like I don't need a lot of stimulation. Yeah.
So let's translate that into relationships, right? Where it's like, hey, I'm okay
facts.
with my own space. I don't need stimulation. I can self-soothe, right? I'm okay on my own. How does that translate into your relationships while you're dating or anything like that?
Yeah, it doesn't translate automatically, because like I'm actually more clingy, I guess. Like, so when you think about attachment styles, it comes out more, I think, in my relationship. So I'm actually the more like my love language is touch. So I'm like, if I'm, which makes sense because like the inner person didn't get that interaction as much, right? Like, so I'm more like, if you just be near me. Like that's all I ever needed as an introvert. Like if I need you in my space, you don't gotta really entertain me. Just be near me, hug me. Yeah, like hug me. I just tell Shaquan, you put your feet on me. Like it's fine. Like I just need to feel you there. But I'm also the kind of present. Like I'm present because I'm introverted. I'm also present to the extroverted need for stimulation. So sometimes I really can't settle into my introvertedness because I've learned to just be aware. I feel like some of these brothers out here are, still learning how to be attentive to their partner's needs, right? So like for me, it's like I'm always asking, like, you good? Because I know I'm all right. I'll be okay, but I wouldn't assume that you would be okay unless you're introverted like me. So I'd be like, is there anything you need? Like I'm aware of the fact that sometimes I could be zoned out in my space, but there could be a need for me in that moment to fulfill. So it's not until people kind of chill or they sleep that I feel like, all right, cool. I could be, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I can calm down. Because usually as a servant, I'm a giver. I'm always like on cue.
How you knew I was going to say that, right? Because I was just
going
to say, well, Gary, you are called to serve and be a shepherd, right? And so if you're doing that, does it naturally come out in all your relationships with your friends, your family, your
I think I think one of the things that Shaquana says about me all the time, who's my partner, she says to me all the time, she's like, I love that you're like this with everybody. So it's not just me. Like you'll hold the door for a random person. You'll talk to a person in line and give them the same level of compassion that you not necessarily give me, but like you're going to be just as calm, just as polite, just as patient with them on like day one of meeting them. You know what I mean? Like, and I feel like that's just come, from my calling. But I don't know. I just feel like it's nice to be nice. Like, I don't know. I feel like, when you meet somebody, you set the tone about, how that interaction is going to turn out. And I just feel like kindness is just always the best policy.
100%. Right.
You get so much more with that.
You're authentic. That's what I'm hearing. Like, you're authentic. You're genuinely who you are at home, not at home. And authenticity is something that we should pride ourselves on, right? Because you don't want somebody going on and be like, I seen Pastor Gary and he ain't opened the door for that lady. Because people and they will do it, right? But naturally, this is who you are. And so it kind of exudes that. Yeah. I'm glad that this is who you are and this is how you show up and other people can see it too, right? From what you've learned about yourself, what do you think you need to work on to even show up more for people? Because I feel like we're never perfect, right? I feel like there are areas in which we can just strengthen ourselves when it comes to relationship. What do you think that is for you?
One of the things that I've been working on now in my relationship is allowing my partner to just have her own journey, as it relates even to like faith. It's been teaching me a lot about just trusting God more with people. Sometimes, when we want to see people come to a certain place by a certain time, we tend to try to push that. We try to rush them. But sometimes I'm learning how to sit back, pray more for the people that I love, right? And model that leadership. So I've been working a lot more on modeling my leadership versus in like just talking to people about it. Like, be it. If you be, then people can see who you are and then have something to follow. And also it just, it makes them think twice about what they're doing when they see you doing something different. Sometimes talk is cheap when it comes to helping people grow. And so for me, I've been working on just praying more, talking less, and living better. That's kind of my focus right now. Also, having the continued courage to show up for myself. You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of times we just don't show up for ourselves. And, but that's because we don't know how to be vulnerable. We don't know how to admit, who we are. We're not comfortable yet. And we're very dependent on people's attached value or perceived value of us. And I'm just coming to a place because I went through a divorce, like coming to a place where I could care less what you think about me. Like, I care like what my people who love me think, but the world, I don't have any control over that. And that's like this place that I'm at now, that hurt, that came with a lot of pain, a lot of, eyes looking at me going through that. But once you get sifted, there's a level of unbotheredness that you get. There's a level of like, I don't know, you just thick skin now. And it's like, if you don't like me, cool. Like, I really can't control that. Unless there's somebody close. Outside of that, it's like, man, let go on then. That's what you want to do. Cause I can't control that. You know what I mean? I can't control what you think about me.
Why does a story kind of change if it is somebody close for you?
Oh, because I feel like, my friends, I just put out Instagram video, just that's kind of going viral right now. Just the friends are the people that you trust to keep you in check. And like, so if my friends who are close to me, see something in me that they don't like, I'm gonna give that a look. Right. I feel like, faithful are the wounds of a friend. So like, I'm gonna let you lean into me. That's your job. I've given you that permission as my friend. Like, hey, check me, and so, I can't worry about what the world thinks about me, but I definitely matters what my kids think about me. It matters to me what Shaquana says about me. It matters to what my mom says about me. My mom has checked me on numerous occasions coming out of this, because she'd be like, man, you sometimes while Shaquana sees, oh, you're very consistent and your patience, my mom would be like, man, you kind of snappy sometimes. And I'd be like, really? Because she's like, it took you so much to kind of advocate for yourself that you got to learn how to like balance that. They say that about people who go to like, who are working special ops in the Army. Like, when they come back home, they got to learn how to turn that off. And I feel like when you go through a battle, you got to just be on guard all the time. Like, hey, I'm checking somebody. But you've been through certain instances. You got to learn how to go, okay, that's not this. Because there were certain things like when I was going through the divorce process, it was just like the things that I was seeing, the therapist at the time was like, hey, you can't paint everything that color. And I was like, okay, because it was definitely there. But she was like, but everything ain't that. And I was like, okay, because sometimes you'd be so high on the defensive, like, I see it and they're like, well, it's a little bit, but it ain't that bad. So you have to learn how to kind of calm down, because everybody not on that energy.
The vulnerability that you have, right? Do you think that people take it as something that's like, hey, I want to be more vulnerable? Or do they think that it's like, hey, why are you opposite spectrums? Like, why are you so vulnerable? Why are you so transparent? Right? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no. So some people, I've heard one person say, they were like, you share a lot. And I was like, yeah, like, this is my space. Like, what I mean? It's my world. And sharing my story, at least to the extent that I've, feel comfortable sharing, has helped a lot of people out. Millions, in fact, which I never thought was going to be the case. So like, based on that, it's been, sorry, I lost my train of thought when you said that, but say that question for me one more time.
Well, no, you were just explaining, somebody said you share a lot.
Yeah, they were like, you share a lot. And I'm like, yeah, of course, this is my space. And, unbeknownst to me, like, I did a video about peace on Instagram, and it just went viral. I didn't think it would. It was a late night kind of session, and it has like over 4 million views, and it's been shared across millions, like, hundreds of platforms, and it's going viral millions of times on those. And I'm like, it's crazy. But I feel like me sharing pieces of my life has encouraged a lot of people more than discouraged or negative views. It has encouraged a lot of people to be vulnerable, at least, even if not be vulnerable, to identify, right? Because I feel like one of the things that people need, if they can't be vulnerable, first is validation. Like, I'm not the only one right there. Like, so I feel like once you feel validated, then we can maybe move toward vulnerability. But, like, I feel like, once you feel like you ain't crazy, then there's like another level of, okay, let me find my voice now. Mm-hmm. When I realize that I'm not that I'm not the problem, but it's not as wild as I thought it was, kind of feeling.
And it's good too that you're able to even have those things roll off your back, right? Because I still need some saving. I'm saved. I just still need some saving.
We all a work in progress.
Somebody say you share too much. My response would be and.
Right.
So for you, it's just like you have the power to share, right? You have a platform for a reason. I feel like whatever God has put in you, people deserve to hear it, right? Because we're supposed to be shepherds of this message anyway, right? Even though you're a pastor, even if we're not pastors, there's so many things that I could share with somebody that touches their lives and brings them to God, or even helps them off that cliff or that edge that maybe if I kept my mouth shut, right, they wouldn't have been able to hear what I had to say, right? Or you as well. You're in a ministry that has a lot of eyes on you, right? And so as you stated that you've been through your divorce, what was that like for you?
Oh, it sucked. You know what I mean? Like, that's the best way to put it. It was like, I don't know what else lies ahead, but it was the worst thing I've been through to date. You know what I mean? Because it's a process, and it's a lot of parts that people don't know about, which I won't give them the validation of even, explaining it to them. You know what I mean? Like, it's just at this point, it's like, yeah, they don't need it. And if they feel like they do, the Lord bless you. And if I do share it, it'll be like at least $19.95 per copy. You know what I'm saying? Like, it'll be in my memoirs. I'm getting paid for my pain. I mean, we're gonna redeem that. But for the most part, for me, it's just like, it was really tough. It was tough because, it is very hard to tell somebody that you love that you don't want to be with them no more. You dread that conversation. And for me, I found my vulnerability through journaling, through writing down my feelings, because as I've said before, the person we need to have the person we need to have a conversation with is really ourselves. It's not other people, and we use people as a vector. You know what I mean? And so journaling was me. I realized when I started journaling consistently, I felt seen, felt, and heard. And I ain't talked to nobody else. You know what I mean? I just needed to express that. And once I articulated that and got those emotions, wrote myself clear, it was like, okay, I feel better because now this information is like articulate. It's not just floating around my heart. I know I have put it to words. And so I did that. I did that first, and it was tough because when I write, words are my love language. So when I write, it's like I'm talking to the person. So writing that, to get my thoughts together, to my partner at the time was gut wrenching. You know what I mean? But it also gave me a lot of clarity as to why this was happening. So it was a rough season, rough time. Yeah.
You said that was probably like one of the worst things you ever had to go through, right? But through it
to date,
right? Through it cultivated something great, right?
Yeah. It's I gotta say it's a mixed bag. Like, when I talk to people now, like, they be like, man, like, even if my friends or people come to me who are like, they know me but they're not super close to me, they're like, man, I'm going through this. I'm like, bro, stay married, bro. Like, work that out, talk through it. Cause like, we didn't just get divorced, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was years of conversation and stuff like that. So I'm like, hey man, you got a beautiful family over there, brother. You got to come through the dark side, bro. This is the valley of the shadow of death before we get to that pasture, bro. So I hope you know what you're thinking about. Cause somebody said to me, and I thought it was crazy. They was just like, it's the easy way out. I looked at that person. I didn't look at him because he was on the phone. It was actually a text message. I was like, this brother is stone crazy. Think that this is the easy way out. I'm like, man, do you know how embarrassing it is to go down to family court to have to stand in that line in front of the clerk with all the other people. You don't know who's going to walk in, who's going to be there, right? Finding a parking space, and I'm not talking about finding, when I'm talking about parking my car and getting the guts to walk out the car into this building to then find the paperwork I need to find, and then not wanting to say the word divorce because it just sounds so horrible, right? Like, bruh, if y'all don't go work that out if you can, because what you're talking to me about right now, that sounds like you can survive that. And I'm not telling you what to do, but that don't sound like divorce quality, like divorce level stuff you're talking about. So it was, but something good came out of it, I guess, because it brought me, to a place of just a place where I can choose myself, and that's okay. It brought me to a place where, my partner that I'm with now, even if I didn't find her, but who I am with now, values me, in a way that I just feel like I haven't been valued before. And I've been kind of carrying this thought with me all week that, like, where a person is appreciated, and for the work they do at Current, they'll do more. And I feel like when you find that space where you appreciate yourself, and then you care so much about yourself that you don't align yourself with anybody else who doesn't, there's a beauty, there's a flourishing that happens when you find that place. You can become somebody completely different.
100%. Too, self-awareness, right? I'm aware that I'm not being, so you are a shepherd, you're a servant, but I'm aware that in this space, in this time, in this season, I'm actually not being fed the way I need to be fed. I'm not being, catered to the way I need to be catered to. I sometimes have a hard time when I see couples, right? And they come into my office and they're like, hey, this is my last resort. I'm just doing it, just say I did it, right? And one of the first things I tell them is, this can't be your last resort. Right. And if your whole thing is, hey, I'm coming here just to check off a box, y'all already done.
Right.
And I say that because people kind of already make up in their minds when something isn't working, and they're at a stalemate where it's just like, none of us are going to budge. None of us are going to move. I have already given you everything I can give you, and what you require of me, I can't give you. I think it's very admirable not to divorce. So and I just know people just take my words and chop them up, right? But it's not admirable to divorce, but it's admirable to be self-aware and know when your needs are not being met anymore. Biblically speaking, I don't think I know too much. I just know the Bible says not to divorce, but I've never read the whole entire chapter in its entirety, so I can't even speak on that too much. It's just one of those things that you learn in church, like, oh, you can't divorce. But then I think, is that what God really wants, right? Because God says that he's supposed to give us the desires of our hearts if it aligns with his will. But would God will us, and I guess this is a question to you, right? Because do you go to school for divination? Divination, is that how that works?
For divinity, I went to school, but I'm still going through my master of divinity, yes.
Okay. So what does the Bible say about that? Like, is it okay? Because sometimes I have people come in my office, and if they are going through abuse, I'm just like, I don't know, right? I don't know if this is what God wants.
So that's a loaded, long question, but my I will give you what I did for myself, I guess, because I feel like that's the best thing I can tell people is you got to search that out for yourself, because when you come to that question, you're going to find two schools of thought, right? You're going to find, people who think that marriage exists in perpetuity for till death do you part. No matter if you part, you're still married. Then you got people who, kind of feel like, okay, well, if it's one of the big A's, adultery, addiction, abandonment, abuse, you're free to go. And I would tend to lean toward that side, and not even, it doesn't have to even be all that deep, because one, God does hate divorce, right? But it's not something that, like, he hates it, but not in the way that we kind of look at it, right? So when we say, okay, God hates divorce, does it mean that divorce is not divorce is not an idea that came from humans? It came from God. Like, it was already a foregone thought in marriage, right? It's in the law. It's not like we created it out of it. It was like, if a person is no longer married to or finds his wife to be unfavorable. Now, it was very patriarchal because, in the Judeo faith, there were a lot of rights that weren't the same for men and women. But there was a certain thing in the law called a get, that was to help the woman to get out of a marriage where she, where if her husband had gone on to war, right, and he had died, and she never got a report of whether he would die, she would be called a guna, which means to be tied to that marriage, no matter whether she knew if her husband was dead or not, because she was married. So a lot of times what the husbands would do before they left, they would give her a divorce certificate that should he not return in a reasonable amount of time, she had the right to be divorced and marry again, whether he was dead or not, if he didn't come back. So a lot of women, and the way the church has kind of handled it, especially with the side that believes that marriage exists in perpetuity, has made the institution more important than the people. God has never made institutions more important than people, right? So a person staying married doesn't hold up the institution of marriage. Like whether you practice the Sabbath or not, the Sabbath is still the Sabbath, right? Like it's holy without you. That's why Jesus said man wasn't made for the Sabbath, but the Sabbath for men. And men weren't made for marriage, but marriage for people. And so when a marriage ceased to be what it should be for a person, a place where people can thrive and serve to the glory of God, take care of their families, procreate, and certain things like that, when it fails to be that, right, when it fails to be what the institution says it should be, it is no longer that thing anymore anyway. You're not in a marriage. You're in a prison, right? And it's no longer serving you. It's no longer leading to the edification of your life in an emotional way, in a spiritual way. You're not a guna. You can come out of that because that person has failed to live up to the covenant that you agreed to. And you can come out of that because and it is because of the hardness of mankind. It is because of the hardness of heart. Some people won't ever change, and you don't have to sit there for your entire life because you thought a person was going to be a certain way, and they cease to be that. Whether it's adultery, whether it's addiction, whether it's abandonment, abuse, emotional abuse, spiritual abuse, you don't have to sit there forever and just sit there in the prison. God has not called you to a life of misery with a person just because you got married. You don't hold up that institution. Everybody will be just fine if you have to leave out of it. And that's my stance. I did a lot of research because I used to live more on the side of marriage exists for perpetuity forever. But once my situation got tough enough, I had to do some more research. And I also do research because I'm a pastor and people come with these kind of questions. And I couldn't just look at, oh, this sounds good. No, people are going through real life issues with really, really crazy people sometimes. And I'm like, okay, what's going to be my word? So when I changed my stance after doing research and listening and learning, and I went to people that I trusted, like, you know what I mean? On both sides. And once the research kind of came back, I was like, yeah, I feel God's freedom, to be able to, to remove myself from what was looking like it was never going to change.
To that person who might have gone through something similar, right, that you did, or just any person really hurting, and they are using their faith to say, like, no, I got to stick through biblical teachings. I'm not going to say faith. Biblical teachings to say,
sure,
I got to stick through this, right? What would you say to them if you know that they are not being served and there is no coming back from it?
One first thing I would do is I would say pray. You need to ask God what you should do. I prayed, I prayed a lot about it. I needed clarity. I needed his word. Even up until the day I left, I prayed. Like, I was like, God, like, today was the last straw for me. I gotta go. Like, it wasn't, you know what I mean? And I don't think it shouldn't be a quick decision. It should be a prayerful one because there are people involved. Like, I have kids, like that affected my kids, you know what I mean? And, but, it should be prayerful. It should be done in wise counsel. Other people should be talking to y'all, not just you by yourself or them by themselves. Like, you need wise counsel around you. I have people weighed in on it, but ultimately it was a decision between me and God. But I would say to you, do your research. Don't sit there because you were raised a certain way or a certain teaching. Learn for yourself, study for that yourself, because many people who start off thinking that marriage exists in perpetuity for all of your life, they switched over to the other camp, not because they went through a divorce. A lot of them still married. They just did the research to see whether that is what Jesus was actually saying. Because do we think that Jesus was really saying to the law teachers that, oh, it doesn't matter, you get married to one person forever, no matter what? Was he really saying that that wasn't the context. He wasn't talking about abused people or abandonment. He was just talking about people who wanted to have no fault divorces, where like, I don't like the way your hair look, or I like the girl down the street, so I want to get out of it. That's not, the Bible was talking to people who are just trying to leave marriages for no reason, not people who are going through abuse. Very different.
Yeah.
Very different context, because there's nothing on domestic violence in the Bible, right? But that doesn't mean that when he talks about loving your enemies or doing good to people, like that counts in a marriage. Like not striking people, not being quarrelsome. That's a marriage text too. Because marriage is the apex of human relationship, everything on a lower level applies to the other level. Mm-hmm. Right. So it doesn't need to be said that you shouldn't hit your spouse.
Right.
Then we don't have to have a section in the Bible on not smacking your wife or your husband, because you shouldn't do that to anybody.
Right.
Let alone
like God, like you
right. Because another therapist asked me that question when I was younger. We were working together, and he was like, where's the text on domestic abuse? I'm like, it's in anywhere you say about thou shalt not kill. Mm-hmm. There you go. Like anything that and above is all related to relationship, and marriage is the apex.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm learning today. I am learning. And this is very helpful, right? Because there are people who do come in, like I said, who are going through some things. And I try to give them biblical text, but just like that, it's just like there is nothing that says that, right? And so we just have to use our wisdom and really pray for discernment on the decisions we're going to make moving forward, if you stay or if you go. But if you come into
the Bible does give provision. The Bible does give provision, though, to people. If you're in an abusive relationship, it is very clear that you can get out of that. Like you can distance yourself and separate for safety always, so that you don't even have to go through any theological, like, you know what I mean, like back and forth. Like, no, if it's unsafe for you physically, even emotionally, you can depart from that. Not necessarily have to get ready to be divorced, but you can separate yourself and get to safety. Like that is a clause already mentioned in the text. So, you know what I mean? But
would you know off the top of your head?
I would say that I think it's 1 Corinthians 7 or 6, but I don't want to like exactly quote it. But it's in that wheelhouse right around there, because that's when Paul starts talking about marriage.
Okay. I'm gonna have to look into that and kind of really educate myself back on that too, right? Because I do sometimes get just a loss for words, because I'm just like, I don't know, right? And I'm okay to say I'm not sure, right? But if they come into my office saying like, hey, we're just taking off a box, you have to step right out too, right? Because I know for sure those people are just like, you already made up in your mind, you know? Mm-hmm. So you have been very transparent, and I appreciate you for that. For people who are doing relationships, right? Because the episode here is you're doing relationships wrong, right? What's one thing that you see that you think could be improved upon in general when you're seeing people go through relationships? And do people come to you for premarital counseling at all? Or? Yeah,
they have. Yeah. And whenever I do people's weddings, I always recommend that they go through that, just so we can look at the kinks, you know, and, you know, through that, I also advise them to go to another therapist as well. But, you know, they also do sessions with me in preparation, because we talk heavily about what marriage is, what it isn't. Because I just really believe if you're not married, you're not married. You know what I mean? They're kind of, well, we kind of married. I'm like, you're kind of not. You know, because I'm like, it's a completely different monster. Like, and it's a commitment level that's very different. But I would say in relationships in general, I think one of the things that people are not doing to now, they're just not having, you know, intentional and uncomfortable conversations up front. You know what I mean? Like, yo, you need to like bump what colors you like, and your favorite flowers. Like, yo, do you have any deep insecurities? Like, you know, how are we going to grow this friendship intentionally? Mm-hmm. Like, even when I met Shaquan, I said, listen, I need a friend. Like, and I know that sounds cheesy, but I need brown sugar. Like, if you're not my friend, like, I don't want it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want it, because I want to be married to my bestie. Like, I don't want to be married to somebody I gotta like. I don't really, you know, I'm like, I don't have to tolerate you, but I want to be friends with you, because at the end of it, like, everybody's looking for love, but we're looking for like an intimate relationship from the jump, instead of just saying like, yo, can I like do life with this person, even if it's not intimate? Mm-hmm. Like, can we laugh? Can we chill together? Are you into, like, do I like you being in your space? Do I like being in your world? Do our values align? And I think friendship is the first place to start. And she checked me. She was just like, okay, so what we going to do to be intentional then? And she made me give her a list. And I was like, oh, like I didn't even start her to meet my energy like that. But she did. And I was like, okay, so we came up with a list and we did intentional stuff to be, and we didn't do what the general world does, you know, like just straight to the whining and dining. It was like, no, car conversations, you know, because we friends. Like I legit want a friend. And it's funny enough, even in our relationship now, we be like, yo, remember those summer card talks? Or like, you know, like that one is amazing. Like, yeah, like, because when I met her, I just told her, I said, listen, I think you're beautiful. I'll give you a full story later, but I'm just like, I do need a friend though. I need a friend. And she was like, okay.
She met you. She met you where you were.
Yeah.
Yeah. She didn't rush nothing. I could do that for Gary. I can start.
Now, she was intentional now. She was intentional. Like she stated, like, listen, I don't got no more of these really in me. So if you playing games, just let me know. And I was like, no, I don't do those. I don't even have a game system at home. Like, you know, like I don't do games. But she gave me space and she gave me timelines and she gave me clarity. You know what I mean? Like I knew what to expect. She knew what to expect. But I told her what I needed she always says, and she'll quote that she was like, it was my honesty and my vulnerability that created the space for her to return that vulnerability and those intentions and that intentionality. Because then I said it from the jump. Like I was like, here, this is what I've been through. This is how I'm feeling. I need a friend. Can you be a friend? If you can't be a friend, it's okay. Because I'm not beholden. Nobody has to be here. But if you can be a friend, I got room for a friend right now. And we friendshiped our way into a relationship. I always say that though. I know it's corny, but I say the USS friendship is the safest passage to the USS relationship. Safest passage.
It's true. Because how many of us kind of just jump into things? We're not even learning how to explore. It's just like, all right, I'm attracted to you. All right, we mesh on this one thing. What's the sense of being friends? Let's just jump right into it, right? And we see how that ends most times, right? Because we're not learning how to communicate. We're not learning how to understand each other's needs, right? We're not understanding each other's triggers. You fall into those triggers and you're just like, hold on, what's wrong with you? Right? Instead of really having those open conversations, periods of transparency and vulnerability really go a long way when you're building a relationship. And so I agree. I feel like people are just they don't have that foundation. That's how they might be just doing relationships. Yeah.
And people don't know how to read. You know, that's the other thing. Our discernment is off. You know, like we a lot of people think they have discernment. They're just traumatized. You know, like, and I can tell for some of the rhetoric, I'm like, nah, that just sounds like insecurities. You know what I mean? Like, you know, being given as like guidelines, like, just sounds like your trauma. If your boundaries are rooted in like somebody else's failure, it just feels like it's trauma to me. You know, and it could just be good advice, and I could accept that, amen. But I feel like when the initial conversation is like, well, somebody failed here. This, you know, that's reactive for me. So like, you know, even so for me, I'm like, listen, you know, we got to learn how to read people. Like one thing that I'm really one thing that I was really glad about is when the first day I saw her, right. I didn't know I was going to meet her. I never had met her a day in my life. Right. Which is crazy because it's Connecticut. And like we had similar friend groups, but we had never met each other. And I got to watch her the whole night, though. Right. So when she caught my eye, she caught my eye. I was like, OK, who's that? Amen. You know, and then I was like, you know, I'm looking like, but then as I'm interacting now, I'm watching her. I'm watching how she treat people. I'm watching how she's looking at adversity. Because there were certain things that were happening while she was there that, like, you know, she's clearly bothered by it. But I watched her regulate herself. And I was like, OK. I also noticed she had a little spice to her. I was like, I could deal with the spice. But like she was giving me like, you know, good friend auntie vibes. And I was like, I need that kind of vibe, you know. So by the end of the night, I was like, I'm not leaving until I say something. I'm not being that guy who says like, you know, who just tells them like ask for a friend type thing. I'm like not doing that, you know. So I put my gear up and I came back and I was just like, you know, blah, 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 put it to the side, just spoke directly to her. Like, and she was just like, I'm like, yes. Like, if you're single, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, here's where I'm at. And she was like, okay, you got my number. I'm like, all right, cool. But it was just, it was I read her. I was looking. I wasn't just like, oh, I'm attracted to her. Her attraction initially caught me, but it was how she was treating people for the rest of the evening that really made me continue to be interested, because there were other people, but it was something, the way she was handling herself, that I was like, I could see something. She's like me. She's a servant. I was like, okay. Because she never stopped working the whole night, and it wasn't even her event. And I was like, yeah, I see that.
That's what's up. I say that a lot, right? Like attracts like, right? And so you saw the servant in her, and the servant in you was just like, I need that. All right.
Yeah.
And you were intentional about it too. I think sometimes we play around too much with the things we want, right? It's just like, oh, am I going to... You ever play... maybe not. You ever played or see people play double dutch? It's like, oh, should I go in?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, I was doing that all night, though. Actually, so it was at a gig, right? And so I stayed like an extra 45 minutes. They got it for free, because I was just like, what am I going to say to her? Oh. So, you know what I mean? So I ended up staying a little, and the vibe was cool, but more than anything, they got free time, because I was like, I can't leave without saying something to her. And it's been amazing ever since I talked to her. We've been friends ever since that day. Yeah.
And then look at where it brought you.
I really feel like it was God, honestly, because, I've seen a lot of good looking people, like, you know what I mean? And it just that little nagging part don't always, like, like I could say something, but I just didn't. There was something about this that was different. And I was like, I'm going to say something tonight.
For sure. And you did.
Yeah.
And now you guys both have the opportunity to grow together. Right, growing.
It's been amazing.
And I'm so nosy. I'm gonna say this every episode. So, do y'all say I love you yet?
What you mean? That was early.
Really?
That was early.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't play games. I feel like these dudes out here be like, I don't know if I love her. What you mean, bro? How you don't know if you love her? We've been together way long enough to tell, like, and we had a joke about who would say it first. But like, the energy was so good. We, like, even that night she texted me, made sure I got home safe, made sure I ate something. Like, we was just consistent. You know what I mean? And we haven't missed a day since we met. And I love her. Like, I tell her I love her all day, every day. She could walk by and be like, I love you. I love you, girl. Like, I'm like, do you know how much I love you? Do you know how much I love you? And she'd be like, oh, how much? And I'm like, I'll just be like, girl, you don't even know. Because I've never felt so cared for in my life. Like, it's different. Yeah, it's out of this world.
She gives you safety. And so kind of as I'm wrapping this back up, in our attachment styles, right? When we feel safe, we don't feel scared to be shamed, right? Or get rejection. Right? And so for her, or for y'all, I should say, she gives you that place to be vulnerable, to be safe, so that if you do act up, she's not necessarily going to push you away or go anywhere. Right, because y'all know y'all in it for a long run, because y'all serving each other in this truth that you've laid out from the very beginning. Right. All right. And so even if you might have an anxious attachment or a secure, you said you have secure. Even if you have a secure attachment with her, and she might have anxious or avoidant, it still works because one of you guys have a soft place to land. Right, when things get a little bit rough. So.
And we talk about it. So she's feeling away. I talk about it. She talk about it, and conversation has been the tool for growth in our relationship. We just talk, like, and even if it's rough, like, and I'll tell her, like, hey, give me your hand. Like, don't go far, because then we close. Like, just stay right here. If we have to talk through something that might be difficult. But and it's a beautiful thing. I will tell you this, though, which will be a conversation for another time, because then we got to wrap up. But when you finally find a healthy place, that's when you really learn where your insecurities are at. You can't see them in an unhealthy place. You can only see your insecurities when you get somewhere that's nice and you're like, ooh, I want to be here. And then when you get there, you're like, ooh, I want to attach, but I've got all of these things that are making it hard for me to feel secure here. So finding her also let me know what I wasn't healed and where I wasn't healed yet. So that was fun. Yeah.
I like that you said it, because you were so guarded before, right?
Oh, yeah. I had to be,
all these walls, right? I tell people don't.
More or less, I was done, though. Yeah, more than I was done, though. So like when you're so you were saying how like people come into your office, they're done, right? So like when you're done with something, you're no longer trying to feel secure in it, because you're trying to detach from it. But when you're trying to reattach, then you realize like, ooh, I've got all these like problems that I didn't realize I had. I thought I had healed here, but I didn't. I just didn't want to be there anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like now that I'm trying to secure myself again, it's like, oh, no. I do have some deep. Ooh, why do I feel that way? Ooh, I never healed from that part of the other relationship.
Right.
Like deep. Yeah.
100%. Oh, I love this. Okay, so we got to the part of the episode where I have the lightning round. So I'm going to ask you some questions there, this or that.
Okay.
Rapid fire. Give me, whatever is on your mind, okay? Some of these questions are going to get you in trouble, but you're going to be all right.
I know how to navigate now.
All right. Windsor or Bloomfield?
Oh, Bloomfield all day. You already know.
Beaches or mountain?
I like the sand on my toes, so beach.
Beaches, okay. Prayer or worship?
Worship.
Worship. A good action movie or a really good comedy movie?
Action.
Okay. Fasting or feasting?
I mean, everybody would want to feast. But I feel like I'll say fasting because I'm more disciplined about how I eat now.
Okay. Football or basketball?
Baseball.
Baseball. Okay. All right. Wait, you play baseball, right?
Yeah, that's
yeah. Nah, I should know. Old Testament or New Testament?
Oh, new.
No. Okay. New age gospel or old school worship music?
Take me back. Yeah, old school. We'll go old school.
Okay. Bible study or
always
prayer
works.
group? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Bible study.
Bible study. Okay. The Conscious Creative Corner or the Conscious Creative Corner?
Conscious Creative Corner.
Hey. All right. It's been a pleasure having you here. I am so glad that you took the time out because time is super valuable and you didn't have to, but you did. Unfortunately, it's not live, but we got some really good gems. I know I'm going to take them away in my practice, so I do thank you for that. For you listeners out there, I'm not even going to tell y'all to subscribe no more because you already know what the red button does. But what you can do is share this video with someone that needs to hear the message that was sent today. I appreciate y'all so much. Make sure you walk good, keep the vibes high, and I'll see you on the next episode.